All right, so I am so thrilled to have Rabbi Goldberg, who goes by Rabbi G for ease and name pronouncement, which really Goldberg I think is pretty easy. But so thrilled to have Rabbi G here for our Beyond the Pharmacy series. He is just an amazing man with such a strong history of helping the community, and I just love that he has given us some time to go through his background and what he has done for his community. So thank you for being with us, Rabbi G.
I'm honored. Thank you, Claudia, for having us.
Absolutely. So you have started Kids Kicking Cancer, and I cannot wait to dive into that, but I'm really big on chronology. And so if you could please take us back to, your beginnings in martial arts, that would be super helpful as we move forward.
Well, actually, my involvement with Kids Kicking Cancer began well before martial arts. My first teacher in the world of pediatric oncology, because our kids are kicking cancer, is my daughter. Our first child was born in Los Angeles, and a week before age 1, before her first birthday, she was diagnosed with leukemia, which then was not the very treatable pediatric illness it is today. And she was an amazing little fighter, and at 2 years old, she'd tell the docs at UCLA, "No medication today, please," and she would tell the children who were in the 5-year-old kids in the clinic not to cry. So she was my first inspiration. Unfortunately, it wasn't a treatable disease, and a number of years later, I found myself directing an oncology camp. In between that time, I got involved in martial arts. I wasn't a tall kid growing up in the Bronx, and the Bronx was an interesting place, so that was my first interest in the martial arts, and I loved the whole physical aspect and the mental aspect of martial arts. And a number of years later, I found myself the rabbi of a synagogue in Southfield, Michigan. And I told all clergy people that you all got to learn how to break your board. So that was my introduction to the martial arts. Got a black belt in a derivation of a Korean martial art called Choi Kwan Do, which instead of like locking out the arms and the legs, which usually end up with joint replacement, it's much more of a rounded form, a very basic form that really got my fancy. And I found myself also at the same time the director of a pediatric oncology camp in New York. For those of your listeners who know, New York is located very close to the United States. And so I came upon this 5-year-old kid who was having his port access for his chemotherapy. So I'm also a clinical assistant professor in pediatrics, so I teach the medical ends of this. We used to teach that there's a pain center in the brain. Today we know it's not true. There's a whole neuromatrix, which means if a person's afraid, they're angry, there's no purpose for their pain, the level of the pain actually rises nociceptively in the brain. And so I found this 5-year-old kid. 2 nurses are pinning him down. A third nurse has a large syringe to plunge into his chest for his chemo. And he's screaming something awful. I walked in the scene. It was so counterintuitive to me. I just yelled, "Wait!" And they all stopped. Even the child stopped screaming. They looked at me. I didn't have a clue what I was going to say next. And I just said to the nurses, "Could you give me 5 minutes with this child?" And the nurses were happy to leave, and the kid looked at me like I was the governor. I just stayed his execution. And I walked over to this child, and I said, "I'm a black belt, which doesn't mean much to a little kid. It's a wow." I said, "You want me to teach you some karate?" And he almost jumped off the table. I explained to him the martial arts you learn that pain's a message. You don't have to listen. You could breathe in this amazing chi, this energy, and push out the pain. Watch me. And 5 minutes later, we're doing a simple Tai Chi breathing technique. 20 minutes later, they pulled the needle out. He looked up at the nurse and he said, "Did you do it yet?"
Wow.
And that's when Kids Kicking Cancer was born.
That's just an amazing story. So it started anecdotally with that one kid and you realizing, well, this could be, served to a much larger population on a much larger scale. And so then you put into place the motion to start the program. And then did it start there with the camp, or did it start?
So I actually started teaching martial arts to children in camp, and then began a formal pilot program in 1999 with children at a group of 10 kids at Children's Hospital of Michigan, which is where I live now, outside of Detroit and Southfield, but the hospitals in Detroit proper. And of course, there was a lot of skepticism on the point of the doctors in the beginning. What's this breathing stuff? Will it work, etc. In fact, my medical colleagues told me at the get-go, don't emphasize the breathing stuff when I give grand rounds. And I now give medical lectures across the world, but don't do that breathing stuff because it's kind of heebie-jeebie. Today, there isn't a hospital that I speak about, literally all over the planet, where they're not people trained to do breath work because of the evidence is so extraordinary. So I started with 10 kids in 1999. One of those kids was a young man that after he had his ribs replaced because of a rhabdomyosarcoma, he had to have several ribs removed, and they put kind of a plate inside of his ribs. And his mom said, as he grows taller, is he going to need to replace that? And they pretty much assured her in a rather negative fashion that, don't worry, he's not going to live that long.
Oh, wow.
And he is now working for us 19 years later,
Wow.
and one of our best instructors, Michael Hunt. But the key is to allow the children to know that they have this power. So we started with 10 students in 1999, and now we see over 5,000 children in 46 hospitals, and just began our 5th country in South Africa.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, that must just be such and going back to purpose, because the mantra is power, peace, purpose, which I would love.
Power, peace, purpose.
Yes. And I mean, we're all looking for purpose in our lives, and what an amazing purpose you have found, but then to instill that purpose into the kids. Can you talk maybe just briefly about those parts, the power, the peace, and the purpose?
Power means that martial arts is very energy oriented. And it's quite spiritual in that sense, that you could breathe in this amazing energy into yourself. And it doesn't matter if you call it chi, ki, tanagadalam, prana, nishama, soul, spirit, light. We just describe it as light. You could breathe in this amazing light. But we tell the children, you don't want to push out that light. What do you want to push out? And they yell, the darkness. And then the children describe their darkness. Pain, fear, anger, cancer, sickle cell, their brother, kids will be kids. But whatever their darkness is, and we help them to scope that into a positive experience, the martial arts teaches that you can use this energy to break through anything. And allowing the children to break through that darkness, that's power creating peace. And we ask the children, what's your purpose? They yell out, to teach the world. From the get-go, and that's such an important therapeutic tool. The children become teachers. First, we have them teaching their folks and the nurses and the doctors, and we began to bring them to groups of other children with different diseases, and created what's called the Hero Circle of children inspiring each other, where you live in Gainesville. So we have children being treated for all different types of illnesses. Mm-hmm. We have the largest sickle cell program in the world, working with children in pain with sickle cell, to use the meditations and the breath work to actually lower vascular occlusive crisis, the things that cause so much pain. But allowing the children to become teachers, so we said, wow, if we can teach children, we can teach adults. We'll just talk slower. And so we began to bring our kids to corporations. 5 years ago, I brought a group of kids to teach Pfizer executives, kids that were in a program in Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York. And 3 days later, they called me from, Pfizer executives. They called me from Pfizer, Italy. Would I come to Rome to teach them how to do our breath breaks? We actually trademarked the entire breath break that we do, B-R-A-K-E, how to use the breath to stop the adrenal gland from shooting out these glucocorticoids of stress. So we went to Italy, which was very cool. And then in Italy, Pfizer introduced us to Bambino Gesù Hospital, which is the Vatican Children's Hospital, which I thought was like really cool, that an Orthodox rabbi needed permission from the Pope's office to teach an Eastern meditative technique to Vatican children.
Awesome.
So now we're in 10 hospitals in Italy.
That's wonderful. I mean, actually, half of my family is in Italy, so I love to hear that. I think it's amazing that this has grown from one anecdotal event to now international. And I love that mantra of power, peace, purpose. And I want to point out, too, that what what has been anecdotal is now really very evidence-based. You've got peer-reviewed published articles that, from what I read, show a lowering of pain by an average of 40%, which for those who maybe aren't in the medical field, going from a 10 out of 10 on a pain scale to a 6 through breathing techniques, I think is just amazing that we can do that and potentially lower the need for pain medication. Also, it's been helpful for kids who have had to do some imaging, correct? Like MRI and CAT scans?
Absolutely, but we use imagery actually as part of the therapy. So the children actually image their pain. Most of we're in the middle now of a functional MRI study, which so far the results have been very exciting, to show the different neural pathways that we address by what we call, and we're getting a trademark on it, pain extraction. There's a lot of distraction techniques that are out there, and they're evidence-based and they're really cool. But the challenge with distraction is that when there's not the clown there or the virtual reality or the game distract the child, and sometimes when the pain is too great, those things will not get their attention. So the child can actually be left alone without the tools that they were relying on. Mm-hmm. Pain extraction is a patient-guided process where we teach the child to identify the discomfort, where it is. Let's say, for example, a child has a pain in their shoulder. We ask the child to, what color is it? How big is it? Is it a marble? Is it a fist? Is it a ball? And the child says it's a fist. And what color is it? 90% of the time they'll say red, sometimes black, which is interesting, the color of inflammation. And so we ask them to then do their breath work. And for example, in the Chinese martial arts, you could breathe in through the palm of your hand. So they're actually pulling up the light, making and poking holes in that image that they're seeing in their body. And as they breathe out, they're breathing out that red darkness. And the more they do it and take control with the slow, focused breath, we've been able to really lower pain significantly. And as we're doing now, showing neural pathway changes. So the ability, what we're understanding about pain today, that it's not just this Descartesian model that there's a pain center in the brain that says, goes from here to there and says, ouch. If a person is afraid, they're angry, no purpose, that's what Ronald Melzack called the neuromatrix of pain. And the more tools you can give people, not just to be distracted from the pain, but to extract the pain, to slowly begin to take control and calm themselves, lowering the stress, which extrapolates the pain message, lowering the fear, which extrapolates the pain message, lowering the despair, which extrapolates the pain message, and being actually able to visualize poking holes in that pain is pretty extraordinary. We're actually in the process now with a company in South Africa building a pain extraction virtual reality. Wow. The children will actually look in their body and see that color shape that they're describing. And it's connected to the microphone. So as they're breathing in, they're actually pulling that light through it and slowly seeing that pain diminish gradually, until the point where they are now more in control over the beast of pain.
That's just fascinating to me because, in traditional medicine, we're very dependent on, the nurse that comes in to provide the medication that allows for but to take that control back, and these kids knowing that and their parents knowing that they're able to manage that on their own, and to not be so sedated so that they can still engage with their family and not have to sleep through, because that's the only option for the pain, I think is just so life-changing. And so I'm so grateful for the work that you all are doing. And in speaking of the work that you're doing, can you take us through what a group or individual session might look like? Because, many people may still think that this is more of a traditional martial arts class, but of course you do change it up because there are concerns over, bones being brittle, et cetera, and the conditions that we're treating.
So we have zero martial arts contact. The only thing the children will be hitting will be very soft pads, and that's with the permission of their physician, because they're children who are neutropenic, etc., where even that might prove a challenge. So we are focused on doing it in the way that we gain medical permission for every child that we work with. But even with that, we've had doctors telling our staff that they should get the kid doing things that we won't let them do, because they're so excited about this patient moving, but we have standards and procedures that have to be uniformly standardized to fit every single hospital in the world that we're working at. So it's really not about kicking and punching. It's about the mind. We have the children. We just completed a martial arts art therapy book.
Wonderful.
Where the children will actually draw their darkness, and then we hold it up and they punch through it. They feel themselves breaking through their darkness, drawing the things that give them light and support and strength. And then connecting more to us, we're building video channels so that we could reach every child in pain across the globe, besides the actual therapists that we send in, which of course are the most effective. But building up a station and a platform to allow the children to do the meditative techniques. We explain to them in the martial arts, the real battle for the martial artist is here. That's the greatest adversary for anyone. The pain, the fear, the anger, the why me type of stuff, which is absolutely natural. We never diss that. We explain to them a martial artist learns how to use his breath or her breath to break through that and to take control. And then we have these meditations where the children get to do what we call a body scan, to go through their body and look for any place of emesis that's causing them nausea or pain or fear, and just kind of let it go and replace it with this light that's the power creating the peace, then allowing the children to image themselves and actually to become teachers. When we bring the kids in front of adults and they get a standing ovation, almost always, it changes something. You know, I was just in South Africa. So we were honored in 2014 to be one of the top 10 CNN heroes.
Yes, I saw that.
It was a very cool thing. But I was, as the CNN guy was sitting in the corner right over here and filming me, I was Skyping with a child from Johannesburg. This is a child who was diagnosed with a pendiomoma, with a very bad brain tumor. And at age 10, he relapsed at age 12. And the docs in South Africa said, we'll just keep him comfortable. There's absolutely nothing anyone in the world can do for relapse to pendiomoma. The parents parents are not going to accept that. And so what happened was they got a hold of us. I asked for their study. I sent their study to John Finley, who was at the time head of pediatric neuro-oncology in California. Now let me just have them close the door for a second. Get a little loud back there.
Sure.
Judith, can you close the door, please? Sorry about that.
No worries.
And so they reached out and I asked for the study and sent it to John Finley. John is now the head of pediatric neuro-oncology at the Children's Nationwide Hospital in Columbus. Great guy. So he calls back. He said, I want to see the slides. Sent him the slides from Johannesburg. He calls back in 2 days and says, it's a misdiagnosis.
Wow.
It's a brain tumor that we can treat. And so this child 2 years later is back in school now.
Wow.
But as I was working with this child in the beginning, he had a lot of pain because the first cocktail that John prescribed to him was very toxic. I mean, a lot of upper GI pain. And the CNN guy is in the corner, and he's filming me with this boy, Daniel. In 10 minutes' time, his pain went down from like a 9 to a 4.
Wow.
His affect changes, his smiling child. And I said, Daniel, you're going to be my first child in South Africa. Never dreaming that I was going to start a program there. Well, a year ago, I got called to speak in South Africa. And my payment that I insisted on, they wanted me to come and speak. Obviously, they ran out of speakers. So the payment that I insisted on was that they helped me start a Kids Kicking Cancer program in Africa.
Wonderful.
Which they really got the right committee together. And the key is leadership. The key is getting people to understand what we're doing. Mm-hmm. It costs money because it's a clinical program. So at every location, we have to pay for people
Sure.
Besides volunteers, we need clinical people who will oversee the work and make sure they understand the medical aspect of what we're doing. And so we started in South Africa. But I had promised Daniel he's going to be my first teacher there. I gave a breath break seminar, and I love to give these seminars to large groups, but I invited Daniel to come on the stage. There were 1,500 people in the audience. Daniel came on the stage. He has a twin brother. His twin brother looks like, very beautiful young man, blonde hair, tall, good looking. Daniel looks like a cancer patient who's been through hell and back. And so that weighs on a 13-year-old child. He had just turned 13 when he came on my stage. And in front of 1,500 people, he taught them how he used this light to break through the darkness of what he experienced for almost a year in a hospital, and to focus himself on that light. And that anyone out there in the audience could use this light because everyone has darkness.
Wow.
At the end of his presentation, he got off the stage, and 1,500 people got up to give him a standing ovation.
Wow.
All of a sudden, he got it. Yeah, he is different from his brother. He's a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And not despite what he went through, but because of what he went through, he's in a unique position to teach the planet how to breathe in the light and blow out the darkness. And the beauty of that message, Claudia, is that's transportable to any child anywhere. That every single child becomes a teacher. One of the greatest challenges that children have when they get a difficult diagnosis, like cancer, is that I'm different than all my friends.
Mm-hmm.
They're out playing, they're going to prom, they look cool, they're doing the stuff. And kids write scripts.
Right.
Comes along a diagnosis like cancer and rips it up.
Yeah.
We teach the children your new script is that you're a world-class teacher.
Wow.
And even, God forbid, when children are not doing well and they're not healing. So we give kids black belts before they pass away. And on the black belt, we embroider the child's name and the words master teacher. Even children as young as 3 and 4 years old want to know there's a purpose why they lived.
Yes. I love that. I loved reading about that, the black belt ceremonies that you have. I mean, and just what an amazing way to honor the child and what they have done for others. What do you feel, you were sort of the mastermind behind it all and the master teacher, and now the kids are becoming teachers. And so what do you feel like maybe is, the top 1 or 2 things they have taught you through this whole process?
Well, first of all, they have taught me absolutely everything. Anything intelligent that I say. I do use a lot of big words because when I speak in medical groups, they let you talk in graduate schools if you a lot of big words. But besides the big words, that most of them I make up, I have learned from the children, starting with my daughter, no matter what you face in your life, you can breathe in the light and blow out the darkness. And no one teaches that better than our kids. We had a young man by the name of Bernard Johnson. There's a group called the Optimist Club. I don't know if you've heard of them. There's like the Lions, the Rotary. Mm-hmm. There's probably a group called the Pessimists. Those are optimists with experience. So the Optimists made a meeting for our Kids Kicking Cancer. And they make this great party at the end of the year. And at the end of this party, Bernard Johnson, who had not at that point turned 11 years old, was being pushed to the front by his twin sister, Brittany. And Bernard asked the Optimist MC for the microphone. And he says, and they were happy to give it to him, in a loud voice, this beautiful African-American child says, "Hi, my name is Bernard. And I want to teach everyone here what they teach us in Kids Kicking Cancer. And that is, no matter what you face in your life, you can breathe in the light and blow out the darkness." And he then proceeds to show how we lift up our body with the breath and hold in that light, and then we relax our body with the exhale and blow out the darkness and pain and fear. And he repeats with the most beautiful smile, no matter what you're facing in your life, you can breathe in the light and blow out the darkness. And then he gave me the microphone. Wow. Claudia, I had to take a breath break.
Yeah.
We all knew that Bernard's mom ran away when he was a baby.
Wow.
His dad died when he was 8 years old. His uncle died when he was 9.
Wow.
And that was the year he was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor that was slowly stealing any motion from his body. With his one good arm and most beautiful smile, he's telling everyone in the audience, no matter what you face in your life, you can breathe in the light and blow out the darkness. So I took a breath break myself because I
Yeah.
couldn't speak. And then I said to the optimist there, I just want you to know, Bernard Johnson defined optimism.
Mm-hmm.
But optimism does not mean that everything is going to be great. Optimism means that we can respond to everything with greatness.
I love that.
And that's what I've learned from the children of Kids Kicking Cancer. That's their message. And everything else that we do, clinically, medically, we really, I have to tell you, I may have been the founder, but the principles that we're able to espouse and standardize and publish, et cetera, are all from the kids.
It's just amazing. I mean, you know, how that comes around full circle with the kids becoming teachers, and what an amazing purpose for them. Now, I know a lot of people are probably going to watch this and think, I want to do those breathing exercises. And I actually found that you have a lot of the recordings of walking you through that on your website, which I think is amazing. So lots of resources for people who maybe just don't have access to, you know, be part of a program like this. For people who want to get involved, want to either donate or want to get involved more hands-on, what would be maybe a good next step for them?
Well, I would suggest on my website, which is kidskickingcancer.org, kidskickingcancer.org, there's also my book online.
Wonderful.
I wrote a book, again, inspired by the children, called A Perfect God Created an Imperfect World Perfectly. It's 30 life lessons from Kids Kicking Cancer, and actually embedded in that book are 30 QR codes. And I tell the reader, if you don't know what a QR code is, here's the web link. And if you don't know what a web link is, you probably have no stress in your life. You don't need it.
That's all true.
But every time somebody listens to one of those audio meditations, the numbers go up in front of our children, letting them know that they're inspiring them.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that book is available from Amazon, and you could go to our website to find it.
Perfect.
That's the best place for it. We also are absolutely looking for leadership in different places. Globally, we want to spread this to every place on the planet.
Yes.
I can't tell you what it was like to be in Africa. You go into Baragwanath Hospital in Soweto, which is the third largest hospital in the world. You see child after child after child after child, and 2 toilets at the end of the hall.
Oh, wow.
And the kids were going through, I asked the docs there, because I really wanted to get a sense of their process. I want to work with the kids who are in the most pain. So I'm being introduced to children who are end of life, amputees, high level pain syndrome. And in 15 minutes, changing the affect on the child, letting them breathe, letting them feel their power. You know, there was one young lady with a terrible cellulitis, and because of her chemotherapy, and I did 8 minutes of breathing with her. At the end, I asked her, you know, what number is it? I think it started, she was like an 8. She looks at me and she says, I don't feel anything now.
Oh, wow.
And I looked, you know, she just looked in my eyes, I don't feel anything. And I turned around and I started crying, because to bring light to such darkness,
Oh, yes.
because 80% of those kids, the parents are visiting them once every 6-7 months.
Oh, wow.
They're 7 or 8 hours away, they're in a township someplace, and they're all by themselves. When I left there, and it's the only time in my almost 20 years of experience working in hospitals, when I left there, the chief grabbed my arm and she said, you have to come back. You're bringing light to my babies. Make sure you come back. And now, of course, we've trained a whole group there, and we're now just creating a regular program. But, you know, I walked out of there so humbled by those children who have absolutely nothing, going through the worst imaginable things. So we need friends to grow this across the planet. It's not an expensive program, but we're looking to grow from our $2 million platform to $6 million. to be able to reach the right kids the right way and the right evidence-based procedures to absolutely become standard of care. Because what we do is so inexpensive compared to the pharmaceuticals, compared to the therapies, and to use this to enhance their therapies. When the kids walk down the hall, they're not just doing OT or PT, they're doing martial arts.
Yeah.
And so that changes their worldview. Disease for children, as well for adults, but especially for children, takes away their power. Returning power to them, allowing them to become teachers, and thus giving them purpose, changes their lives. And it certainly has changed mine.
Just a wonderful, heartwarming story. I'm going to start doing some breath breaks for sure. Now that I know, I looked at it last night and I was all about it. I was doing it, and it really honestly did help me even just in the short time I did it. So power, peace, purpose. I just loved your whole story. What an amazing legacy to leave after your daughter passed and to spread throughout the world. I really appreciate your time, Rabbi G. Appreciate everything that you do. I'm going to share the information and the links to both the website and the book. I certainly appreciate all of the time you've given us and information. Thank you.
Claudia, thank you so much for helping us to spread the message. And maybe, God willing, I'll see you in Florida.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that. Let me know if you come by. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Power, peace, purpose.
Absolutely. Thank you.